been 6 weeks since we've had a class. Still, I'll ask the question. Do any of you have questions about the material of last class? Okay. You don't. That means you have no idea what I talked about, or I was so brilliant that I left all those questions. In our most recent class, we ran out of time in our discussion of the story of Naboth's vineyard in 1 Kings 21. It is important to look at this text more closely because the subject bears very directly on the theme of biblical economics. We've been on this an entire year, by the way. We began this theme January of last year. And we have moved from the end of the 11th century at breakneck speed through the 10th century, and now we're in the first half of the 9th century. Now, as I've written the lectures every 2 Sundays, one of the things I've noted is the lack of secondary literature. Which means I'm doing everything as primary literature. And so it's possible that I will have a book at the end of this. It's possible. We will see. But there are some of the things I've said in class. As far as I know, I'm the first one ever to say them, which is a little bit scary since the church has been commenting on the scriptures for 2,000 years. And you would have thought by this time, see, normally if you find a new idea in the scriptures that nobody saw before, that's called heresy, because it really is a new idea. So I'm going to be very cautious. On the other hand, we're dealing with economics, for crying out loud. We haven't gotten into the theology of economics very much, but that will change. It starts to change mid-9th century. And by the 8th century, the Bible's interest in economics is entirely in the field of ethics. Let me too, thank you so much for that water. It helps. Now, up till now, we have considered biblical economics, namely from a historical and social perspective. In the story of Naboth's vineyard, however, we are presented with a distinctly moral perspective. In this same story as well, we find the first instance of a biblical prophet addressing the moral dimensions of economics. We find this prophetic intervention in the first half of the 9th century, and I think you have some dates there at the top of your first page. The reign of Ahab, from 869 to 852, toward the end of the first half of the 9th century. Everybody see where we are? Let's now look at the story, which we read six weeks ago, but I couldn't do much with it because we ran out of time. 1 Kings 21. You have the text in front of you. And it came to pass after these things that Naboth the Jezreelite had a vineyard which was in Jezreel. By the way, the city of Jezreel is very close to the city of Samaria, very close, or has been known now Nablus, which is an Arabic corruption. I don't want to see the Arab corruption, but it was Neapolis, okay, meaning new city, and that gets When Greek is spoken a long time by Arabs, it changes. It comes to nablus. Well, Jezreel is very close to that. He had this vineyard, which was in Jezreel, close to the palace of Ahab, king of Samaria. So the king himself had a palace in Jezreel. So Ahab said to Naboth, spoke to Naboth, saying, "Give me your vineyard, that I may have it for a vegetable garden, because it is next to my house, for it I will give you a vineyard better than it, or if it seems good to you, I will give you its worth in money." Now we observe two things about this text so far. First, Naboth and Ahab are neighbors. They live close enough to one another to be called neighbors. Therefore, they're bound by this commandment in Leviticus, which I've written in there for you in your text. Everybody have a copy? I don't think there are more than 30 of you here. That's how many copies I ran off. Okay, I want to make sure everybody's got a copy, except those of you who know it by heart. Leviticus 19:9. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Okay. Those are the only ones that God obliges us to love, are those who are neighbors. Okay. Or as the first epistle of John says, how can I love God whom I do not see, unless I love my brother whom I see? Whom I see. The neighbor is somebody you actually see. Second, this is a concrete example of someone coveting the property of a neighbor. That's a specific item in the Decalogue, isn't it? Exodus 20:17. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything of your neighbor's. Okay. The desire for something that the neighbor has, okay, it's already morally unacceptable to God. Anything the neighbor has, and you want it, you're already out of favor with God, already, in thought. Now, we will have more to say on this subject in due course. Down the road, we shall see that the neighborhood is the expected setting of the moral order in the earliest parts of the Bible. The neighbor is, as St. John says, the brother whom you see. The brother whom you see. If you don't see him, he's not a neighbor. Now, Naboth is not cooperative with this suggestion. But Naboth said to Ahab, "The Lord forbid that I should give the inheritance of my fathers to you. Nahalat abotai. My nahalah abotai, my inheritance." Now notice how Naboth refers to his vineyard. The inheritance of my fathers. Not only is Naboth unwilling to sell the vineyard, in fact, by the Torah, he is forbidden to sell the vineyard. Why? It does not belong to him. It belongs to God. It is on loan to the family. In the Torah, a man may not sell any real estate because it doesn't belong to him. It belongs to his grandchildren. He acquired it only by inheritance. He didn't purchase it. Therefore, he can't sell it. It is the Nahalat Abotai. the inheritance of my fathers. The property does not belong to him. It belongs to his family as a kind of loan from God. Leviticus 25:23. You have the text in front of you. The land shall not be sold permanently, for it is my land. Literally, the land belongs to me. Kili ha'aretz. Kili ha'aretz. The land is mine. It's not yours to sell. Now, in the Torah, homesteads are owned by families. They can only be acquired by inheritance. So according to the Torah, no family may ever be deprived of its land. Real estate investments are impossible. Now, the land will never be used, according to Torah, the land will never be used as an instrument of exploitation. The land will never permit an uneven distribution of wealth. That's in the Torah. So in the Torah, no family may ever be deprived of its land. According to the Torah, no one has a right to sell his inheritance because the inheritance belongs to his heirs. He is forbidden to alienate it. Now see how different from contemporary philosophy are the prescriptions of the Torah. I've spoken about this in sermons, but I haven't preached any sermons, very many sermons recently. But I remember making that point in sermons I've preached here before. This is a moral issue. That's why inheritance taxes are intrinsically immoral. They're as immoral as adultery. They're as immoral as murder. Inheritance taxes are intrinsically immoral. None of that belongs to the government. The biggest theft that ever takes place is the theft of taxation. There are constant warnings about it all through the scriptures. Okay. I'm presuming this lecture is being monitored by the FCC. I see some folks have oh my goodness, the Dean is here and Mrs. Dean. Thank you for your Christmas message. This is how I found out you're living in the United States now, and not up to that godless Canada. Okay. Hi, Chris Ann. Hello, A. Lee. Hi, Jane. Okay. Now, I'm just giving you the Torah at this point. The Bible has a lot more to say beside the Torah. By the 9th century, however, this was already an outdated idea in the popular mind. I just love when people come to me and tell me I'm out of date. You think I was a piece of cheese or something, I'm out of date. I remember we had a situation back in Butler, Pennsylvania, where I was pastor before, where there were two old people in their 70s having a quite public affair. They should have been cramming for their finals, but they were having a public affair, and I laid down the law. I was taking communion to a shut-in in our parish, a lady in her 90s. And she reproaches me for taking this hardline attitude toward this. Oh. And this lady in her 90s tell me, Father Reardon, you are so out of date. I didn't say anything. Well, I must have said something, but I have said nothing memorable. But I wanted to look at the out-of-date label that was pinned on her. I mean, when is your shelf life over? You know? You know, as though something is wrong, but at a certain point, it's not wrong anymore. Doug Johnson makes that point very well in the most recent issue of Touchstone. How is it that Christians of every stripe for 2,000 years say, before that, even Judaism, this is wrong. And then all of a sudden, there's a vote someplace, it's not wrong anymore. And the vote was taken, of course, at the Synod of Lambeth in 1930, which is less than 100 years ago. But all Christians, East and West, Catholic and Protestant, and Orthodox, all the fathers of the church all say that contraception is an offense against God and a violation of the order of creation. All Christians said it. And Synod of Lambeth in 1930 says, well, there might be circumstances in which. Why? All of a sudden. The moral law simply does not have an out-of-date label on it. You know, at a certain point, it's not law of God anymore. By the 9th century, this idea that the land belonged to God and given to families was already an outdated idea in the popular mind. As we have seen, there was a great migration away from the family farm during the time of Solomon as Israel's economy changed. As the population grew, there was less and less land for more and more people. So this rule really wasn't a practical rule anymore, in the sense that it led to poverty. Much of the labor, therefore, moved from the farm to the trades in the larger economy. So Naboth's ideas are about 100 years out of date. Still, the Torah is on his side. Even the king was not in a legal position to argue with Naboth. So Ahab becomes depressed. Verse 4. So Ahab went into his house sullen and displeased because of the word which Naboth the Jezreelite had spoken to him. For he had said, I will not give the inheritance of my fathers, same expression again. And he lay down on his bed and turned away his face and would eat no food. This is the king. He's got his feelings hurt. At this point, the Malka steps in. Malka is the feminine part of Melech. Melech, of course, means king. Very good, king. Melech means king, Melchizedek. The Malka is the female form. The queen's name is, well, you got it here at verse 7. But Jezebel, his wife, came to him and said to him, why is your spirit so sullen that you eat no food? And he said to her, because I spoke to Naboth the Jezreelite and said to him, give me your vineyard for money, or else, if it pleases you, I will give you another vineyard for it. And he answered, I will not give you my vineyard. Now, this report sounds very strange to Jezebel. She's not an Israelite. She is a Phoenician princess. She is unfamiliar with any restrictions placed on the ability of kings to do what they want. For Phoenician royalty, everything was reducible to money. Did you actually see that thing where Mrs. Yellen, she's the secretary of the treasury. Did you see that thing the other day? I know that they've always thought that anybody would actually come out and say it. She said, abortion is good for the economy. She actually came out and said that. Abortion is good for the... Oh, well, hello, Jezebel. Hello, Jezebel. Abortion is good for the economy. She actually came out and said it.
It might be without, maybe it's not important. The fact that the root Phonetic king means to own, not to possess.
Forgot that. Thank you for that. That just slipped my mind completely. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, that's yeah.
Can you repeat that, Father Ted?
You repeat it. Because that has to do with the root.
No, I understand.
Malak, to possess.
Possess, to own. The root in Hebrew, Semitic language is for king. It's from the root for to possess, to own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for that. That somehow I wrote the lecture. So for Phoenician royalty, everything is reducible to money. If you can't quantify it financially, it's not important, it's not significant. Phoenician culture was not primarily agricultural, although they certainly sold a lot of farm goods. The Phoenician culture was mercantile and commercial. Phoenician presuppositions were not those of the city. Pardon me. Phoenician presuppositions were those of the city, not the village. Now, one of the things to note is that the Torah is our commandments given for the village. By the 9th century, there was no culture to compare with that of Phoenicia. That's Lebanon, by the way, for those of you who recently joined the class, not so familiar with the geography. That's Lebanon. There was no culture in the 9th century to compare with that of Phoenicia. Because the Phoenician city-states sat in the conjunction between the Fertile Crescent and the Mediterranean basin, they controlled the economy of the latter. The Phoenician city-states are pretty famous. One of the most famous is called Byblos. You see there the root of the word Bible. Byblos is a place where they made lots and lots of papyrus. They're treating of papyrus. Therefore, books. What is the Bible? It's a collection of books. Tyre is T-Y-R-E. It has nothing to do with rubber. Okay, T-Y-R-E. And Sidon. Sidon is sort of an island city-state. Sits off the coast. And therefore was simply laughed away at sieges. And when the Babylonians laid siege to Sidon, they just laughed them off. As manufacturers, the Phoenicians were best known for textile fabrics. The large clothing industry, dyes, especially purple, which has to do with the root, doesn't it? Pinnic, from the murex shells. Blown glass, spice production, metalwork, carved wood, especially cedar. Except the cedars of Lebanon, carved wood. They imported a great deal of ivory from Africa and India. They imported ivory. And they carved the ivory. Incense. The Phoenicians were famous for their commercial and maritime enterprises. They established harbors, trading posts, and settlements throughout the Mediterranean basin, and even to the west coast of the Iberian Peninsula. Some of those cities are in existence to the present day, such as Cadiz. As for the Israelites, their wealth was derivative. They would never become a player in international trade except for the immediate neighborhood of Phoenicia. God bless you. So for Jezebel, this whole scruple about an inherited vineyard was ridiculous. She would take care of the problem for her spineless husband. Then Jezebel, his wife, said to him, "You now exercise authority over Israel. Arise, eat food, and let your heart be cheerful. I will give you the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite." And she wrote letters in Ahab's name, sealed them with his seal, and sent letters to the elders and the nobles who were dwelling in the city with Naboth. She wrote in the letters, "Proclaim a fast." I don't need, oh, okay, here we go. Thank you, sweetheart. Now, an ad hoc fast was sometimes proclaimed the event of a perceived disaster. Something must have happened to justify them calling the fast, so that the community might receive guidance for how to proceed. So proclaim a fast and seat Naboth with high honor among the people. And seat 2 men scoundrels. That's the way I translated it. What is really sons of Belial, B'nai Belial. I translated scoundrels, sons of Belial. Before him to bear witness against him, saying, "You have blasphemed God and the king." And take him out and stone him that he may die. So now you've got royalty seizing control of the judicial system. And here's another violated precept from the Decalogue. Exodus 20, verse 13. You shall not bear witness against whom? Your neighbor. Your neighbor. Observe for now that the context of the commandments was the neighborhood. The nobles of Jezreel followed the instructions of Queen Jezebel. So the men of the city, the elders and nobles who were inhabitants of the city, did as Jezebel had sent to them, as it was written in the letters which she had sent to them. They proclaimed a fast and seated Naboth in a high honor among the people, and 2 men, scoundrels, son B'nai Beelzebub, sons of Belial, came in and sat before him, and the scoundrels witnessed against him, against Naboth, in the presence of the people, saying, "Naboth has blasphemed God and the king." Then they took him outside the city and stoned him with stones so that he died. We've had examples of this kind of thing much closer to our own times. When I read that, I thought, that's Henry VIII, isn't it? Isn't that Henry VIII? Gets whatever he wants. Here's a man who knew how to tell the church what to do, and seized all the property of all the monasteries. Just seized it. So I guess some of my distrust of government is coming out here in this.
We got the title of Defender of the Faith first.
We're getting flyers now about the election, the aldermanic election. And I'm completely astounded. We've had the same alderman here for well over 20 years, Ariel. I heard this man campaign many times. Not once did he ever address the question of abortion, ever. Never said anything about it. Never. And I wouldn't expect that of an alderman. And notice now, first qualification. A woman's right to choose will not be threatened in this aldermanic district. When has it ever been? Now, if you're counting them, this is one more violation of the Decalogue. You shall not steal. The murderers sent word back to Jezebel. Then they sent to Jezebel, saying, "Naboth has been stoned and is dead." It came to pass when Jezebel heard that Naboth had been stoned and was dead, that Jezebel said to Ahab, "Arise, take possession of the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite, which he refused to give you for money, for Naboth is not alive but dead. The inheritance tax kicks in. So it was when Ahab heard that Naboth was dead, that Ahab got up and went down to take possession of the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite. Now, since Naboth had been convicted of an offense against the throne, the property was subject to official confiscation. It was changed from a vineyard to a vegetable garden. After all, veggies are good for you. I mean, really? So theft is now added to coveting and false witness and murder. You shall not steal. Now here is an example of governmental theft. Many decades earlier, the prophet Samuel had warned of this very thing. You want a king? He'll take your stuff. He warned him. 1 Samuel 8:14. He will take the best of your fields, your vineyards, your olive groves, and give them to his servants. Who was the largest landowner of pasture land in England in the 16th century? The church. All these monasteries. The king just grabbed it all. Now let's recall that Samuel had raised objections against the adoption of monarchy as soon as the question was raised near the end of the 11th century. And from time to time, prophetic voices had warned and reproached the kings. The prophet Nathan comes to mind during the reigns of David and Solomon. The dominant prophet in the first half of the 9th century was Elijah, who was a dependable thorn in the side of King Ahab. Indeed, it appears that Elijah's prophetic ministry was entirely coextensive, coterminous with the reign of Ahab. Elijah is introduced to the reader immediately after the introduction of Ahab in the list of the kings. 1 Kings 16:29. In the 38th year of the reign of Asa, king of Judah, Ahab, the son of Omri, became king over Israel. Now Ahab, the son of Omri, did evil in the sight of the Lord more than all who came before him. It came to pass as though it had been a trivial thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, that he took as wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, the king of the Sidonians, and he went and served Baal and worshipped him. See, there's the sin. There's the sin of Ahab, is idolatry. And then immediately, right after that verse, very next verse, in chapter 17, verse 1, and Elijah the Tishbite of the inhabitants of Gilead, so he comes from the east side of the Jordan Valley, said to Ahab, as the Lord God of Israel lives, before whom I stand, okay, Asher Amatati Lipnai, before him I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain these years except at my word. That is how Ahab is introduced in the Bible. There's somebody who can turn the rain off and on with his prayers. The prayer of Elijah was powerful over atmospheric conditions, which is kind of interesting. Power over atmospheric conditions in the Bible is given only to prophets, never to governments. Okay, I mean, this is it's in my lifetime that we actually have governments think they're going to control the weather. I mean, they hold meetings in Davos. The government's going to control the weather. I mean, just the raw arrogance of the whole thing. I got to get back to my text here. James chapter 5, verse 17. And Elijah prayed earnestly that it would not rain. It did not rain on the land for 3 years and 6 months. Okay? Or as Father Andrew said in a recent sermon from down Daniel, time and times and half a time. 42 months. Time and times and half a time. That appears in the book of Revelation, doesn't it? 3.5 years. During this drought, we recall, Elijah lived near the brook Cherith, where he was fed by a couple of ravens who brought him bread and meat twice a day. You've seen that icon. One of my favorite icons is Elijah being fed by the ravens. They came each morning, brought him breakfast. They came, brought him a little supper, bread and meat. The Cherith Brook, the Nahal Cherith, was a stream that flowed westward from Gilead into the Jordan. It's usually identified now as the Wadi al-Yabus, and there's still a wadi there. Elijah was evidently hiding out in some cave or recess. He stays there until the drought has dried up the stream itself. When it does, the prophet migrates to Lebanon. He knew his life wasn't worth a penny if he migrated to Israel. He knew that. So he went to Lebanon. He went to Phoenicia, to a place called Zarephath. You all know these stories. There he is safe from the clutches of Ahab and Queen Jezebel. For the duration of the drought, he stays with a Gentile widow and her young son. This family he feeds miraculously. That story is told in 1 Kings 17, how he miraculously feeds this widow and her son during the entire duration of the drought. After an appointed time, Elijah reappears in Israel in order to present himself to Ahab. Before he prays to have the rain restored, the prophet of the Lord challenges Jezebel's team, the prophets of Baal, to a little friendly competition on Mount Carmel. A little friendly competition. You all know the story. The friendly competition involves eventually stoning all the prophets of Baal to death. It's not good to cross somebody like Elijah. After this friendly competition, Elijah prays and starts to rain. Remember the great scene? Looking out over the sea from Mount Carmel. A cloud about the size of a man's fist. And then it grows and grows and grows and grows. Before long, Elijah says, we got to get out of here, the flood's coming. In this great scene where Elijah comes running off Mount Carmel, he runs 16 miles, and he stays out ahead of Ahab's chariots. He outruns the horses. It's my kind of prophet. I could watch this all day long. Now, this account is told in 1 Kings 18. The following chapter describes Elijah's pilgrimage to Mount Horeb to meet the God of Moses face to face. He walks 40 days and 40 nights in the strength of bread and water. After the episode of Naboth's vineyard, Elijah appears one more time. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite, saying, Arise, go down to meet Ahab, king of Israel, who lives in Samaria. There he is in the vineyard of Naboth, where he has gone down to take possession of it. You shall speak to him, saying, Thus says the Lord, have you murdered and also taken possession? And you shall speak to him, saying, Thus says the Lord, in the place where the dogs licked your blood, the dogs licked the blood of Naboth, dogs will lick your blood, even yours. So Ahab said to Elijah, Have you found me, O my enemy? Now remember, there's a price on Elijah's head. And he answered, I have found you, because you have sold yourself to do evil in the sight of the Lord. Behold, I will bring calamity on you, and I will take away your posterity, and will cut off from Ahab every male in Israel both bond and free. I will make your house like the house of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha the son of Ahijah, because of the provocation which you have provoked me to anger, to make Israel to sin. This is the way to make God really upset. Kill somebody and take his stuff. And concerning Jezebel, the Lord also spoke, saying, the dog shall eat Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel. That's all described later on, of course, in the when Jehu shows up. The dog shall eat whoever belongs to Ahab and dies in the city, and the birds of the air shall eat whoever dies in the field. But there was no one like Ahab, who sold himself to do wickedness in the sight of the Lord, because Jezebel his wife stirred him up. And he behaved very abominably in following idols, according to all that the Amorites had done, whom the Lord had cast out before the children of Israel. Now the episode of Nabal's vineyard was not only a crime, it was also the symptom of a more fundamental error. See, the real sin is idolatry, the worship of a false god. The social offense of Ahab comes from a deeper infidelity. See, the root of the second half of the commandments is the first half of the commandments. Let me try it one more time. The root of the second half of the commandments is the first half of the commandments. See, all the other commandments flow from that. Adonai, okay, I am Adonai Eloheka, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, the Eretz Misraim, from the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. Get that commandment wrong, and everything else goes from it. Everything else goes. No more honoring of parents. I'd say no more respect for tradition. No more respect for life. No more respect for marriage. No more respect for property. No more respect for truth. So the real sin is idolatry, the worship of a false god. The social offense of Ahab comes from a deeper infidelity. See, in the beginning, I'll be talking about this a great deal more tonight. But the first big division in the act of creation is the division between light and darkness. Before anything else gets made, God divides light from darkness. The darkness on the face of the Tahom, darkness is on the face of the deep. Okay, and faced with that darkness, God says, Yehi Or, or Yehi Or, let there be light, and there was light. And then God looks at the light. God looks at the light. It says, Kitov, it's good. See, the Muslim God does not do that. Everything that exists is an expression of God's will. God knows what he has made. The Christian God is made because he knows it. The light is the first thing he made. The intrinsic intelligibility, the intrinsic why. As I said, Doug will remember when I said at a Touchstone editors meeting several months ago, because you asked me, what do you mean by that? Okay, remember what I said? I said, Allah has no logos. Allah has no logos. Allah has no logos.
Did you publish it?
What's that?
Did you publish in touch?
Oh, no, those are just, these are, I don't publish them. These are little comments, you just brush these off. But I remember saying that, and I remember Doug looked up and said, "What do you mean by that?" Did I explain it very well?
Yes.
Okay.
There is a video online that explains it further.
Say something about it. It has to do with a Sunday school that I gave here a long time ago, right after the Pope's famous speech at Regensburg, where the Pope made that point, made exactly that point, and I think I referred to the Pope's speech at a sermon I gave. I said we came down for Sunday school afterwards, and somebody, this is all online by the way. I could hear the discussion. These people. John Maddox was saying some things, for example. Jeremy Swift was saying good things. Polycarp, I hear all the comments going on. It was very interesting to listen to that. But I gave a whole talk on that. Nancy has recently posted that online. Has something to call it voluntarism or something like
It's
that?
called Will and Intellect, Introduction to Voluntarism.
Okay, well, thank you, Nancy. Yeah, Will and Intellect. It's recently published, recently posted on my webpage. Nancy has, this past week, put me on something called Rumble.
Rumble.
Yeah, I'm on Rumble.
That's Christian Facebook.
No,
It sounds
it's-
like steampunk or something.
No.
No.
It's video where you won't get taken off if you hold the wrong opinions.
See, Rumble, that sounds like something the dean would be on.
Got thumbs up. There you go.
Have any questions for me? Yes, Bob.
So Ahab's story and David's story, what's the key difference?
You'll never have it for one thing.
The difference I would see has to do with what David did was, as Nathan says to him, you did this in private. The revenge is going to be taken on you in public. See, what Ahab and Jezebel did was quite public. I think that would be the big difference. I see in Elijah the first step in the direction of Amos and Isaiah in the 8th century. There it's going to be very public. It's going to be sustained, considerable, constant, sustained objection to the way the government and the wealthy, and the collusion of the government and the wealthy over other people. But you're right to see there's a continuity problem. No, you're right on that.
It almost seems like Ahab was irredeemable at this point.
Oh, you're asking about the personality difference. Oh yeah, he really was.
Okay.
He really was. David himself is guilty of murder. The sweet people are here. I should break off. Pray through the Father, through the Son, in the Holy Spirit, now and ever. The God who is, who was, is to come at the end of time.